The wind didn't knock. It just shoved its way through every crack in the cabin walls, rattling the windows like something trying to get in. Marakeen sat close to the stove, close enough that the heat made her face tight, but she didn't move back. Cold had a way of settling into bones at her age, and once it got in, it didn't leave easy. 53 wasn't old. She had to keep reminding herself of that. But 5 winters alone on this mountain had a way of adding years that the calendar didn't count. The cabin creaked. Wood settling, she told herself. Just wood settling. She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders and stared at the stove's orange glow through the grate. Thomas had built this stove, installed it the summer before the cancer took him. He'd been so proud of it, running his hand along the cast iron like it was something precious. "This'll keep you warm when I can't," he'd said. She'd laughed at him then, told him he was being morbid. 3 months later, she wasn't laughing. The wind howled again, and something clattered outside, probably the loose shutter on the shed she kept meaning to fix. The list of things she kept meaning to fix had gotten long. Too long for one person. Too long for tired hands and a back that argued with her every morning. Mara stood, joints protesting, and moved to the window. She rubbed a clear spot in the condensation and peered out into the storm. Nothing but white. Snow coming down so thick she couldn't see the tree line, couldn't see the fence posts, couldn't see anything but the violent swirl of winter eating the world. She should go to bed. Morning would come whether she slept or not, and the animals would need feeding. The chickens would need water. The roof over the woodpile would need checking. Always something needing. She was turning away from the window when she saw it. A dark shape, barely visible through the white, moving, stumbling. Mara's breath caught. Someone was out there. Her first instinct was to step back, to pull the curtain, to pretend she hadn't seen. Nothing good came to a woman alone at night. Nothing good came stumbling through a blizzard. But the shape collapsed, fell forward into the snow, and didn't get up. Damn it! She grabbed her coat from the hook by the door, shoved her feet into Thomas's old boots, still too big, still smelling faintly of him, and pulled the door open. The wind hit her like a fist, stealing her breath. Snow stung her face. "Hey!" Her voice disappeared into the storm. "Hey, can you hear me?" Nothing. Just the wind's scream. She pushed forward, boots crunching through snow already past her ankles. The shape was maybe 20 yards from her door, 20 yards that felt like a mile. When she reached it, she saw it was a man. A big one. Face down in the snow, one arm stretched out like he'd been crawling. "Hey." She grabbed his shoulder, tried to turn him. Dead weight. "Come on, you can't stay here. You'll freeze." He groaned. Not dead then. Not yet. Mara got her hands under his arm and pulled. He barely moved. The man had to be 6'3", maybe more, and built like he'd spent his life hauling logs. She was 5'4" on a good day and hadn't hauled anything heavier than a water bucket in months. "I need you to help me," she said, voice sharp. "I can't carry you. You understand? You have to move." Another groan. Then, impossibly, he shifted, got a knee under himself. "That's it. Come on." Together, her pulling, him crawling, they made it to the cabin. She had to half drag him through the door. He collapsed on the floor just inside, and she barely got the door shut against the wind before it would have torn off the hinges. The cabin suddenly felt too small. This man took up space, physical space, sure, but something else too. The air felt different with him in it. Dangerous. Mara stood there, breathing hard, and looked at what she'd brought inside. He was younger than she'd thought, Kikit, mid-20s maybe. Dark hair plastered to his head, ice in his beard. His clothes were wrong for the weather. A canvas jacket too thin, jeans soaked through. His lips had gone blue. Hypothermia. She'd seen it before. Mountain didn't care how strong you were. She knelt beside him, started working at his jacket. The zipper was frozen. Her fingers felt clumsy, but she got it open, peeled the wet fabric off his shoulders. His shirt underneath was damp with sweat and melted snow. "Can you hear me?" she asked. His eyes opened, brown eyes, unfocused. He looked at her like he wasn't sure she was real. "You're okay," she said, surprised at how steady her voice sounded. "You're inside. You're going to be okay, but I need to get you warm." She grabbed blankets from the bed, from the chair, every blanket in the cabin. wrapped them around him. His whole body was shaking, tremors so violent his teeth clicked together. Stay here. Like he could go anywhere. Don't move. She filled a pot with water and set it on the stove. Not too hot. She remembered that much from the winter safety pamphlet the county had sent out years ago. Too hot, too fast could stop a heart. While the water heated, she got more wood on the fire. The cabin's temperature had already dropped from the open door, and she needed it warm. Needed it warmer than warm. The man, boy, really, up close, he looked even younger, had stopped shaking. That was bad. That meant his body was giving up. Hey. She crouched beside him, touched his face, skin like ice. Stay with me. What's your name? Nothing. I'm Mara. You're in my cabin. You're safe, but I need you to talk to me. Need you to stay awake. His lips moved. She leaned closer. Rowan? Barely a whisper. Rowan. Okay. Good. Where were you going, Rowan? Anywhere. His eyes found hers. Just anywhere. Something in his voice made her throat tight. She knew that tone, recognized the weight in it. Well, you're here now. You're here, she said. That's somewhere. The water was warm enough. She brought it over, started cleaning the ice from his hair, his face. His hands were the worst. Fingertips white, no feeling. She worked them gently, dipping them in the warm water, watching for the color to return. It took an hour, maybe more. Time moves strange when you are fighting to keep someone alive. But slowly, the shaking came back. His skin lost that waxy look. His fingers turned from white to red to something close to normal. Mara sat back on her heels, suddenly exhausted. You're lucky, she said. Another 10 minutes out there. I know. Rowan's voice was stronger now. He looked at her, really looked at her for the first time. Thank you. I don't know what I would have. Don't, she cut him off. You don't owe me anything. I couldn't leave you out there. He nodded, looked away. Most people would have. Maybe. Silence settled between them. Outside, the storm kept raging. Inside, the stove ticked and popped. You want to tell me what you were doing out there? Mara asked finally. Rowan's jaw tightened. Running. From what? Does it matter? It does if whoever you're running from is going to show up at my door. He shook his head. Nobody's coming. Nobody knows where I am. Hell, I didn't know where I was. Mara studied him. He looked exhausted. Looked like someone who'd been running for a long time before tonight. You got family? She asked. Not anymore. Friends? Someone who might be worried? No. The words sat heavy in the warm air. Mara knew that weight too, the weight of being nobody to nobody. You can stay tonight, she said. Storm's too bad to go anywhere anyway, but tomorrow, I'll leave, I know. He tried to sit up, grimaced. I appreciate it, really. I won't be any trouble. Famous last words, Mara thought, but she just nodded. She made him tea, found some bread that wasn't too stale and cut thick slices. He ate like he hadn't seen food in days, and maybe he hadn't. She didn't ask. By the time his plate was empty, his eyes were drooping. You can take the bed, Mara said. No, I'll take the floor. You've done enough. The bed, she said firmly. You're still half frozen. Floor's too cold. I'll take the chair. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he was too tired. Thank you. Stop thanking me. She helped him to the bed. He was still unsteady on his feet, and he was asleep before she pulled the blanket over him. Mara settled into the chair by the stove, wrapped herself in what was left of the blankets, and listened to the stranger in her bed breathe. She should have been scared. Should have been a lot of things, but mostly she just felt tired, and maybe just a little less alone. Morning came gray and grudging. The storm had blown itself out, leaving the world buried under 2 feet of fresh snow. Mara woke with a crick in her neck and the stove gone cold. Rowan was still asleep. She studied him in the thin light, the sharp line of his jaw, the way his hand curled under his cheek like a child's. Whatever he was running from had worn him down to nothing. She got the fire going, started coffee. The smell filled the cabin, and his eyes opened. "Morning," she said. He sat up too fast, winced. "What time is it?" "Early. 6, maybe." "I should go." "You should eat first." She made eggs from the chickens. Miraculously, they'd survived the storm and fried the last of the bacon. He ate slower this time, but still like a man making up for lost time. "Where will you go?" Mara asked. Rowan shrugged. "South, maybe. Somewhere warmer." "That's not a plan. It's all I've got." She refilled his coffee, refilled her own. Outside, the sun was trying to break through the clouds. "I could use some help," she said, surprising herself. "Just for a day or two. There's things need fixing before the next storm. If you wanted to work for your meals, I mean." He looked at her, suspicion and hope warring in his expression. "Why would you do that?" "Because I need help," she said simply. "And you look like you need a place to catch your breath. We both get something out of it." "I don't want charity." "It's not charity, it's work, hard work. More than I can pay for, honestly, but I can feed you and give you a warm place to sleep until you figure out where you're going." Rowan was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Couple days," he said. "That's all." "That's all, Cha," Mara agreed. She didn't believe him, didn't believe herself either. Rowan proved useful fast. By noon, he'd cleared the snow from the chicken coop, reinforced the fence that had been leaning since last spring, and split enough wood to last a week. He worked with his head down, barely speaking, moving like a man trying to outrun his own thoughts. Mara watched him from the window while she kneaded bread. He was strong. That was obvious. But there was something else. A carefulness in how he moved around the animals, how he stacked the wood, how he checked the fence posts twice to make sure they'd hold. This wasn't a man who'd grown up soft. That evening she made stew. They ate in silence, the cabin warm and smelling of wood smoke and cooking. It was almost comfortable. "You live here alone?" Rowan asked finally. 5 years now." "That's a long time." "It is." He waited, but she didn't offer more. After a moment, he went back to his stew. "How old are you?" Mara asked. 26. "And you're running from what? Law? Family? A woman?" His spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. "Just bad decisions. We've all made those. Not like mine." The weight in his voice again. Mara knew better than to push. "Well," she said, "whatever you're running from, it's not here. So while you're here, you can just be Rowan who fixes fences. That enough for you?" He looked at her like she'd handed him something precious. "Yeah," he said quietly, "that's enough." And 1 day became 3. 3 became a week. Rowan fixed the loose shutter, patched the roof, rebuilt the steps to the porch. Every evening he'd say he should move on, and every morning he'd find something else that needed doing. Mara stopped arguing, stopped pretending she didn't need the help. They fell into a rhythm. She'd cook, he'd chop wood, she'd tend the chickens, he'd check the fences. In the evenings, they'd sit by the stove, and slowly, they started to talk. He told her about growing up in foster care, told her about the family that took him in when he was 16, taught him to work with his hands, then died in a car crash 2 years later. Told her about drifting after that, taking jobs where he could find them, never staying long enough to put down roots. She told him about Thomas, about the cancer, about the winter she'd almost given up, when the loneliness got so heavy she could barely breathe. "Why'd you stay?" Rowan asked one night. "Where else would I go?" "Anywhere. Town. Family." Mara shook her head. "No family left. And town." She looked into the fire. "Town has opinions about a woman my age living alone. Some think I'm crazy. Some think I'm desperate. None of them think I'm capable. They're wrong. Maybe. Doesn't change what they think. So you just hide up here?" The accusation in his voice stung because it was true. I'm not hiding, she said. I'm surviving. There's a difference. Is there? She didn't answer. Couldn't answer. The trouble started 2 weeks after Rowan arrived. Mara was in town for supplies. She couldn't avoid it forever when she felt the stares. Worse than usual, heavy and judgmental. Eleanor Price, the postmaster's wife, cornered her outside the general store. Mara, the woman's smile was all teeth. Haven't seen you in a while. Been busy. So I've heard. Eleanor's eyes glittered. Got yourself a house guest? Mara's stomach dropped. I don't know what you're talking about. Come now, Henry Miller saw smoke from your chimney at odd hours, and young Tom Carson said he saw a man chopping wood up your way. Big fellow, dark hair. I hired someone to help with repairs. Did you now? Eleanor leaned in, lowered her voice. Mara, dear, I'm not judging. You're a woman with needs, I understand that. But people talk, and a woman your age with a young man like that, it looks bad. Heat flooded Mara's face. There's nothing. He's just helping with the property. I'm sure. Eleanor patted her arm. But you might want to think about appearances. For your own good. Mara wanted to scream. Wanted to tell Eleanor exactly where she could shove her opinions. But she just nodded, grabbed her supplies, and left. When she got home, Rowan was fixing the gate. He looked up, smiled, then saw her face. What happened? Nothing. Mara. They know you're here. She set down her bags harder than necessary. Town knows. His face went carefully blank. What'd they say? Does it matter? It does if it's going to cause you trouble. She turned on him. Everything causes me trouble, Rowan. I'm a widow alone on a mountain. I could be baking bread for orphans and they'd find something to criticize. So no, I'm not worried about what Eleanor Price thinks. But you're worried. I'm always worried. He was quiet for a moment, then, I should go. No. Mara, no. She surprised herself with the force of it. I'm not letting small-minded gossips run my life. You're helping me. You're working for your keep. There's nothing shameful in that, and I won't pretend there is. People don't see it that way. I don't care what people see. But she did care, and he knew it. That night, she barely slept. And when she did, she dreamed of Eleanor's knowing smile, of the whole town watching, judging, deciding she was unfit to live on her own. Totik. 3 days later, they came. Mara was hanging laundry when she heard the truck. She turned, squinting into the afternoon sun, and her stomach sank. Sheriff Carson. And with him, 2 men she recognized, Ben Hollis, who owned the bank, and James Pritchard, head of the county board. Men with power. Men who'd never so much as looked at her before. Rowan appeared from the barn, wiping his hands on a rag. Who's that? Trouble? The truck stopped. All 3 men got out, and Sheriff Carson tipped his hat. Afternoon, Mara. Sheriff, what brings you out here? Just a welfare check. We've been hearing some concerning things. Such as? Ben Hollis stepped forward. He was a soft man, round in the middle, but his eyes were hard. Such as you've been keeping company with a vagrant, man with no history, no references, living in your home. He's helping with repairs. Is he qualified to do that work? James Pritchard asked. Or is this just charity? The way he said charity made it sound dirty. He's qualified, Mara said evenly. And it's my property. I can hire who I want. Under normal circumstances, sure. Sheriff Carson looked uncomfortable. But Mara, folks are worried about you. You're out here alone, getting older. I'm 53, not 90. And it's not appropriate for a woman in your position to be living with a strange man. It raises questions about your judgment. The air went thin. Mara felt Rowan tense beside her. My judgment, she repeated slowly, is fine. That's not what people are saying. Ben's voice was almost gentle. Almost. There's been talk about having you evaluated. Make sure you're capable of handling your affairs. The threat landed like a punch. You can't do that, Rowan said. Actually, we can. James smiled, and it wasn't kind. If there's concern about a person's mental competency, the county has a responsibility to step in, for their own protection. I'm perfectly competent, Mara said, but her voice shook. Then prove it. Send this man away. Show us you can make sound decisions. And if I don't? The three men exchanged glances. Then we'll have no choice but to pursue official channels, Ben said. For your own good, Mara, we're trying to help you. They left her standing there, heart pounding, the world tilting under her feet. Rowan's hand found hers. They can't actually do that, can they? Mara's laugh came out broken. They can do whatever they want. They're the law. They're the power. And I'm just a widow who should know her place. She pulled her hand free and walked into the cabin. Behind her, she heard Rowan swear, low and vicious. The trap had closed, and she had no idea how to get out. That night, neither of them could eat. Mara sat at the table, staring at nothing. Rowan paced like a caged animal. I'll leave, he said for the 10th time. And then what? They win? You keep your land. For how long? She looked up at him. You think this is really about you? About propriety? They want me gone, Rowan. They want this property. Your being here just gave them an excuse. Why would they want this land? It's barely profitable. I don't know. But even as she said it, something nagged at her. Something she'd heard years ago. Thomas mentioning geological surveys, mineral rights. There has to be something we can do, Rowan said. Like what? Fight the sheriff? The county board? I'm one woman with no money and no power. You're not alone. She met his eyes, saw the fierce determination there. You barely know me, she said softly. I know enough. The weight of those words settled between them. Mara felt something shift in her chest, something she'd thought died with Thomas. This is crazy, she whispered. Probably. They'll destroy us both. Maybe. She stood, moved to the window. The mountains beyond were turning purple in the dusk. This land, this hard, beautiful, unforgiving land. It had taken everything from her, and somehow it was the only thing she had left worth fighting for. Eleanor Price, she said suddenly. What? Eleanor Price, the postmaster's wife. She knows everything, every secret, every rumor, every dirty deal in this county. Mara turned. If there's something going on, she'll know about it. Why would she tell you? She wouldn't, but she might tell someone else, someone she doesn't see as a threat. Understanding dawned on Rowan's face. You want me to talk to her? No, I want you to talk to her daughter. Sarah works at the diner. She's young, she's bored, and she can't keep a secret to save her life. If her mother knows something, Sarah will have heard about it. It was a long shot, but it was all they had. Rowan went to town the next morning. Mara stayed behind, unable to face the stares, the whispers. She worked herself to exhaustion, cleaning, organizing, doing anything to keep her hands busy and her mind quiet. He came back at dusk, and his face was grim. You were right, he said. There's something under this land. Silver, a whole deposit of it. The county's been sitting on the survey for months, waiting for the right time to move. Mara sank into a chair. How much? Enough to make them rich. Enough to make you inconvenient. So they'll push me out, take the land, and mine it themselves. That's the plan. She laughed, and it sounded slightly unhinged even to her own ears. All this time, I thought they just didn't like me. They probably don't, but that's not why they're doing this. What do we do? Rowan pulled out a chair, sat across from her. His hands were flat on the table, scarred and strong. Marry me, he said. Mara blinked. What? Marry me. Tonight. Make this legal. Make it so they can't claim you're incompetent or vulnerable. You'll have a husband, a partner, someone with a legal stake in this property. Rowan, that's crazy. I know, but it'll work. They can't declare a married woman unfit as easily, and if we're legally joined, they can't separate us or force me to leave. You'd do that? Tie yourself to me, to this mess? I'm already tied to it, already part of it. He leaned forward. Mara, I've been running my whole life. From family, from loss, from everything. I'm tired of running. Let me stand and fight. With you. She searched his face, saw no hesitation, no doubt. This isn't real, she said. This marriage, it'd just be on paper. It'd be real enough for the law. And after, when this is over, then we figure it out together. He held out his hand. What do you say? Mara looked at his hand, looked at this man who'd stumbled into her life half frozen and desperate. This man who'd become necessary. You're insane, she said. Probably. She took his hand. Then I guess we're both insane. They drove through the night to the county seat 2 hours south, where nobody knew them. Found a justice of the peace who married them in a tiny office that smelled like old coffee and cigarette smoke. The whole thing took 15 minutes. Mara Keene became Mara Hale. She wore her everyday clothes. He wore his. They had no rings, no flowers, no witnesses except the justice's bored assistant. It should have felt hollow. It didn't. When Rowan said, "I do," he looked at her like he meant it, like this wasn't just strategy. And when she said it back, her voice steady, she felt something she hadn't felt in 5 years. Hope. They drove back in silence, stopped at a diner for coffee as dawn broke over the mountains, sat across from each other in a cracked vinyl booth, two strangers who were now legally bound. We just did that, Mom, Mara said. Yeah. We're married. Yeah. She started laughing. Couldn't help it. The absurdity of it, the terror, the wild, impossible hope. Rowan watched her, then started laughing too. They laughed until tears ran down their faces, until the waitress looked at them like they'd lost their minds. Maybe they had. No going back now, Rowan said, wiping his eyes. No going back, Mara agreed. They got home as the sun climbed over the ridge. The cabin looked the same. Everything looked the same. But it wasn't. Not anymore. Mara Hale stood on her porch, their porch, and waited for the wolves to come. They wouldn't have to wait long. The certificate felt like fire in Mara's pocket. She touched it every few minutes, making sure it was still there, still real. Paper and ink. That's all that stood between them and ruin now. Rowan was out in the yard, splitting wood like he was trying to work something out of his system. The axe came down hard, clean strikes that sent logs flying. Mara watched him through the window, this man who was now legally her husband, and felt the strangeness of it settle into her bones. 24 hours ago, she'd been alone. Now she was half of something she didn't fully understand. The coffee had gone cold in her cup. She dumped it, started a fresh pot. Her hands shook slightly. From exhaustion, she told herself. Just exhaustion. Rowan came in, bringing the smell of fresh-cut wood and cold air. How much longer you think before they show up? Not long. They'll hear about it. Small counties talk. Good. He set the axe by the door. Let them come. Mara turned to face him. You're not scared? Terrified. But I'm done running. He looked at her, and something in his expression made her chest tight. You? I've been scared for 5 years. What's one more day? He almost smiled at that. Almost. They didn't have to wait long. By mid-afternoon, the sound of tires on gravel announced visitors. Mara looked out to see not one truck, but two. Sheriff Carson in the first, Ben Hollis and James Pritchard in the second. Here we go, Rowan said quietly. They walked out together, side by side. United front. Mara's heart hammered so hard she could hear it in her ears. The men got out, and the sheriff's face was stone. Mara, Mr. Hale. The use of Rowan's last name, her last name now, wasn't lost on anyone. Sheriff, Mara said, voice steady, steadier than she felt. Heard some interesting news this morning, Ben Hollis said. He looked like he'd bitten into something sour. Congratulations are in order, apparently. Thank you. Bit sudden, wasn't it? James Pritchard's smile was thin as paper. Yesterday you're hiring help. Today you're married? We know what we want, Rowan said. Didn't see the point in waiting. How romantic. The sheriff's tone could have frozen water. Mind if we come in? Have a talk? Actually, I do mind, Mara said. Unless you've got a warrant, we're done talking. The three men exchanged glances. Something passed between them, a decision made without words. Now, Mara, Ben started. It's Mrs. Hale, she interrupted, and I think you gentlemen should leave. We will, James said, but you should know, this doesn't change anything. Marriage to a drifter with no prospects doesn't prove competency. If anything, it raises more questions. Questions like what? Rowan's voice had gone dangerous quiet. Like whether you're taking advantage of a vulnerable woman, like whether this marriage is even legal, given her state of mind. Mara's hands clenched into fists. My state of mind is just fine. We'll let the courts decide that. The sheriff tipped his hat. You'll be hearing from us. They left, and the silence they left behind felt poisonous. Rowan kicked the porch railing. They're going to fight this. I know. They could drag this out for months, years even. I know that too. He turned to her. Mara, I'm sorry. I thought this would be enough. It's not over yet. She forced her voice to sound braver than she felt. They're testing us, seeing if we'll break. Will we? She looked at him, this stranger, this husband, this man who'd chosen to stand when he could have run. No, we won't. But doubt had crept in, cold and insidious. What if the marriage wasn't enough? What if they found a judge who'd declare her incompetent anyway? What if— Stop, Rowan said. What? I can see you spiraling. Stop. I'm not. You are. I can see it. He stepped closer. We're in this now, both of us, and I don't lose easy. You don't even know me. I know you pulled a stranger out of a blizzard when you could have let him die. I know you've survived 5 winters alone that would have broken most people. I know you're stronger than they think. He paused. Stronger than you think. Mara's throat went tight. What if you're wrong? Then we'll figure it out together. That word again. Together. It felt foreign in her mouth, but she was starting to believe it might be possible. The next 3 days were quiet. Too quiet. Mara kept expecting another visit, another threat, but nothing came. The silence felt worse than the confrontation. Rowan kept working, fixed the barn door that had been hanging crooked, cleaned out the gutters, reinforced the chicken coop against predators. He moved around the property like he owned it, because legally, now, he did. Half of it, anyway. Mara caught herself watching him more than she should. The way he moved, deliberate and sure. The way he talked to the animals, low and gentle. The way he'd look at her sometimes, like he was trying to figure out a puzzle. They were married, living under the same roof, sleeping in separate beds, him on the couch, her in the bedroom, but married all the same. The strangeness of it hadn't worn off. On the 4th day, someone knocked. Mara's stomach dropped. Not another confrontation. She couldn't take another confrontation. But when she opened the door, it was Sarah Price, Eleanor's daughter. The girl looked nervous, glancing over her shoulder like she expected someone to jump out. Sarah? Mara blinked. What are you doing here? Can I come in, please? I shouldn't be here, but I had to tell you something. Mara stepped aside. Sarah hurried in, wringing her hands. Rowan appeared from the back room. Everything okay? This is Sarah, Mara said. Sarah, this is Rowan, my husband. Sarah's eyes went wide. So it's true? You really got married? We did. The girl sat down hard in a chair. Oh, this is bad. This is really bad. What's bad? Rowan asked. My mother, she's been talking to Mr. Hollis and Mr. Pritchard. They've been having meetings, secret ones, at our house after the post office closes. Sarah looked at Mara. I wasn't supposed to hear, but I did. They're planning something. Mara's blood went cold. What kind of something? They're going to petition the court, say you're not mentally fit, that the marriage proves it, that you're being manipulated. They've already talked to Judge Hendricks. He's on their side. Of course he is, Rowan muttered. There's more. Sarah's voice dropped. I heard my mother talking about the land, about what's under it. She said once they get you out, they're going to buy it for nothing and make a fortune off the silver. We already knew about the silver, Mara said. But did you know they're offering kickbacks? My mother's getting 10% of whatever they make. So is Sheriff Carson. They've already divided it up. Sarah's hands twisted in her lap. I know my mother's not a good person. I know she's mean and she gossips and she's made your life hard. But this is different. This is stealing. Why are you telling us this? Rowan asked. Sarah met his eyes. Because it's wrong, and because, she looked at Mara, because you were kind to me once. When my father died, you brought food. You didn't have to. Nobody else did, but you did. Mara barely remembered it. A casserole, maybe. Some bread. Nothing special. I was just being neighborly, she said. It mattered. Sarah stood. I should go. If my mother finds out I was here. Thank you, Mara said. Truly. Sarah nodded and slipped out as quickly as she'd come. Rowan closed the door behind her. Judge is already in their pocket. That's a problem. That's an understatement. We need a lawyer. With what money? Mara laughed, but it came out bitter. I can barely afford feed for the chickens. Then we need something else, something they're not expecting. Mara paced the small cabin. Think. There had to be a way out, had to be. The mineral rights, but, she said suddenly, what about them? Thomas bought this land outright, fee simple. That means we own the surface and everything under it. They can't mine without our permission. So? So what if we lease the rights to someone else? Someone they can't push around. Rowan stared at her. You want to beat them to it? Not beat them. Make it impossible for them to win. If the mineral rights are already leased, they can't touch them. And if we structure it right, we could make enough money to hire actual lawyers. Fight them properly. Who would we lease to? I don't know yet, but there are mining companies, big ones, that would kill for access to untapped silver. We just need to find one and make a deal before the county can stop us. It was risky, more than risky, but doing nothing meant losing everything. How do we find a mining company? Rowan asked. Library, county seat, they'll have records, contacts. Mara grabbed her coat. We leave first thing tomorrow. That night, she couldn't sleep. Lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through scenarios. What if they couldn't find a company? What if the deal fell through? What if the county got wind of it and stopped them before they could sign anything? Too many variables, too many ways to fail. She heard Rowan moving around in the other room. Heard him get up, walk to the window. He couldn't sleep either. Mara got up, wrapped a blanket around her shoulders, and found him standing in the dark. You okay? She asked. He turned. In the faint moonlight, his face was all shadows. Keep thinking about what happens if we lose. We won't. But if we do, then we lose together. She moved to stand beside him. That's the deal, right? Together? You don't owe me anything, Mara. This is your fight, your land. I could still walk away. Could you? He was quiet for a long moment. No, I don't think I could. Then stop talking about it. They stood there side by side, watching the mountains turn silver under the moon. And for just a moment, Mara let herself imagine a future where they won, where the land was safe, where this strange partnership became something real. It felt dangerous to hope like that, but she did it anyway. Morning came too fast. They drove to the county seat in Rowan's beat-up truck, the heater barely working, breath fogging in the cold air. The library was a brick building that smelled like old paper and floor wax. The librarian, a tired-looking woman with glasses on a chain, barely glanced at them when they asked for mining company directories. Third floor, reference section. Can't check them out. They spent 4 hours going through records. Company after company, most too small or already contracted elsewhere. Mara's eyes burned from reading. Her back ached from hunching over the table. This one, Rowan said finally, pointing to an entry. Cascade Mining, headquartered in Denver. They've been expanding into this region. And look, they just lost a bid on a claim 2 counties over. They're actively looking for new sites. How do we contact them? Phone number's right here. Mara looked at the number, looked at Rowan. What do I even say? The truth, that you've got high-grade silver and you're looking to lease. They'll want surveys, proof. Then we tell them about the county survey. If they're interested, they'll do their own assessment. It sounded too simple, but sometimes simple was all you had. They found a payphone outside the library. Mara fed it quarters with shaking hands and dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Cascade Mining? How may I direct your call? Mara's voice cracked. She cleared her throat. I need to speak to someone about mineral leasing. One moment. Muzak played. Mara's heart hammered. This is David Chen, Acquisitions. How can I help you? Mr. Chen, my name is Mara Hale. I own property in the northern mountains, and I have reason to believe there's a significant silver deposit on my land. I'm interested in leasing the mineral rights. Silence. Then, what makes you think there's silver? A county geological survey. I can provide documentation. Has the site been independently verified? Not yet, but I'm willing to allow assessment. More silence. Mara could hear papers shuffling. Mrs. Hale, I'm going to be honest with you. We get calls like this all the time. People who think they're sitting on a fortune. Most of the time, it's nothing, or the deposit's too small to be worth extraction. This isn't nothing. You sound very sure. I am, and I'm also in a time crunch. There are other parties interested in this land, and I need to move fast. Other parties? His tone sharpened. Mining companies? Let's just say I have motivated competition. She could almost hear him recalculating. When can we see the survey? I can fax it today, but I need someone on site within 48 hours. That's very fast, Mrs. Hale. It's necessary. Are you interested or not? Another pause. Then, fax the documents to the number I'm about to give you. If they check out, I'll have a team there day after tomorrow. Mara grabbed a pen from Rowan, scribbled down the fax number. Thank you, Mr. Chen. Don't thank me yet. We haven't confirmed anything. She hung up, and her legs nearly gave out. Rowan caught her arm. You did it, he said. Maybe. If they come. If the survey's good enough. If... One step at a time. They drove back to town, found the county clerk's office. Getting a copy of the geological survey required filling out forms, paying fees, waiting while a board clerk disappeared into a back room for 20 minutes. But finally, Mara held the document in her hands. Pages of technical jargon and geological terms she barely understood. But there, in black and white, estimated deposit of $30 to $40 million in extractable silver. Rowan whistled low. No wonder they want you gone. They faxed the survey from a shop that charged $2 a page. Mara counted out the money carefully, aware of how little she had left. Now we wait, Rowan said. Now we wait. They grabbed food from a diner, cheap burgers and watery coffee, and drove home. The sun was setting by the time they pulled up to the cabin, painting the mountains in shades of amber and rust. For one moment, before the fear came back, Mara just looked at it. Her land. Her home. The place she'd fought so hard to keep. We're going to win this, she said. Rowan looked at her. Yeah, we are. The call came the next morning. David Chen's team would arrive at 10 a.m. the following day. They'd need access to the property for preliminary assessment. If the deposit looked promising, they'd move to formal negotiations immediately. Mara hung up the phone and realized her hands were shaking. This is real, she said. Getting there. What if they find something wrong? What if the survey was off? Then we'll figure something else out. There might not be time for something else. Rowan crossed the room, took her shoulders gently. Mara, breathe. You've done everything right. Now we just have to see it through. She wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe this crazy plan could actually work. That afternoon, a car pulled up. Not the sheriff this time. A sedan, official-looking with county plates. A woman got out, tall, gray-haired, carrying a briefcase. She walked up to the porch like she owned it. Mara Keen? Hale. Yapki. Mara corrected. Mara Hale. The woman's mouth thinned. Of course, I'm Patricia Vance, county attorney. I'm here to inform you that a petition has been filed questioning your mental competency. There will be a hearing next week. The words hit like stones. On what grounds? Rowan demanded. On the grounds that Mrs. Hale, has demonstrated erratic behavior, hasty marriage to a transient, refusal to cooperate with county officials, isolation that suggests declining mental health. That's garbage, Rowan said. That's for the court to decide. Patricia pulled papers from her briefcase, held them out. You're being formally notified. The hearing is scheduled for Tuesday, 9 a.m. I'd suggest you obtain legal representation. Mara took the papers with numb fingers. And if I'm found incompetent? Then a conservator will be appointed to manage your affairs, including any decisions about property sale or lease. The trap was springing shut. They'd moved faster than expected. Patricia got back in her car and left, trailing dust. Mara looked at the papers, looked at Rowan. They know, she said. About the mining company. They have to know. How? Small county. People talk, someone saw us at the library or heard me on the phone, or it doesn't matter how. They know we're trying something, so they're accelerating their timeline. Then we accelerate ours. Rowan's jaw set. The team comes tomorrow. We get them to assess fast. We sign a lease before the hearing. Can we even do that if there's a competency question pending? You're not incompetent until a judge says you are. Until then, you have every right to make your own decisions. It was a gamble. Everything was a gamble now. They spent that evening preparing. Rowan walked the property boundaries, made notes of where the survey markers had been placed. Mara gathered every document she had, deed, survey, tax records, proof that this land was hers and she had the right to do with it as she pleased. What if this doesn't work? She asked as they sat at the table, papers spread between them. Then we show up to that hearing and fight. I'm scared, Rowan. Me too. The honesty of it steadied her. He wasn't pretending this would be easy, wasn't promising victory, just promising he'd be there. Why are you doing this? She asked. Really? You could have left a dozen times. Why stay? He was quiet for a long moment, turning his coffee cup in his hands. I told you I was running, he said finally, and I was. But I was also looking for something that felt like it mattered. Like I mattered. He met her eyes. I matter here. To this land. To you. I haven't mattered to anyone in a long time. Mara's throat went tight. You matter. So do you, and I'm not letting them take that away from you. She reached across the table, took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and solid. Thank you, she said. For what? For knocking on my door. He smiled, small but real. Thank you for opening it. They sat like that, hands clasped as the night deepened around them. Tomorrow would bring the mining team. Next week would bring the hearing. But tonight, they had this. Two people who'd found each other in the storm, holding on against the dark. Morning arrived cold and clear. Mara was up before dawn, too nervous to sleep. She made coffee, made breakfast neither of them could eat. Rowan paced the porch, watching the road. At 9:30, the truck appeared. Not one truck, 3. Cascade Mining didn't mess around. David Chen got out of the first vehicle, younger than Mara expected. Mid-30s, sharp suit that looked out of place against the mountain backdrop. 2 other men and a woman followed, carrying equipment. Mrs. Hale? Chen extended his hand. David Chen. Good to finally meet you. Thank you for coming so quickly. Your timeline made it sound urgent. His eyes took in the property, the cabin, Rowan standing protective at Mara's shoulder. This is all yours? 200 acres. The survey indicates the deposit runs primarily through the eastern section. We'll need to verify that. My team will do core samples, run our own analysis. If the numbers match what you've provided, we can talk terms. How long will it take? To assess? Rest of today, probably. To draft a lease agreement? He smiled. I brought a lawyer. If we like what we find, we can have papers ready by tonight. Tonight, before the hearing. before the county could stop them. "Let's get started," Mara said. The team spread out across the property. Mara watched them work, drilling, taking samples, conferring in low voices. Rowan stayed close, alert for any sign of trouble. By noon, Sheriff Carson's truck appeared on the ridge, just sitting there, watching. "They know the team's here," Rowan said. "Let them watch." Cheese. But Mara's stomach churned. The sheriff's presence felt like a threat, a promise that this wasn't over. The team worked through lunch, through the afternoon. As the sun started its descent, Chen called Mara over. "The deposit's real," he said. "Actually richer than your survey indicated. We're looking at potentially 50 to 60 million in extractable ore." Mara's knees went weak. 50 million? Conservatively. "Mrs. Hale, Cascade would very much like to lease these rights. We're prepared to offer you 15% royalties on all extracted ore, plus a $50,000 signing bonus." The numbers didn't feel real, couldn't be real. "How soon can we sign?" she asked. "My lawyer's drafting the agreement now. We can execute tonight if you're willing." "I'm willing." Chen studied her face. "Mrs. Hale, I have to ask. The rushed timeline, the county vehicle watching us all day. Are you in some kind of trouble?" "Yes. Legal trouble. The county's trying to take my land. They want the silver for themselves." Chen's expression hardened. "I see. And the marriage that showed up in our background check?" "Is legal and none of your business," Rowan said. "Fair enough." Chen looked between them. "Look, I don't know what you're fighting, and I don't need to, but I will say this. Once you sign with Cascade, you'll have a lot more resources at your disposal. We protect our interests. That includes our lease partners. Meaning if anyone tries to interfere with this lease, they'll have to go through our legal team, and we have very good lawyers." Hope flared in Mara's chest. "Then let's sign." They gathered around the cabin's small table as darkness fell. Chen's lawyer, a woman named Rebecca with severe glasses, laid out the contract, page after page of legal language that Mara barely understood. "Take your time," Rebecca said. "Read it carefully. This is a 30-year lease with options to extend," Mara read. Rowan read over her shoulder, his hand resting on her back. The terms were generous, more than generous. Cascade would handle all extraction costs, environmental compliance, everything. Mara would get her percentage, paid quarterly, plus the signing bonus up front, $50,000. More money than she'd seen in her entire life. "There's one clause you should note," Rebecca said, pointing to a section. "The lease is contingent on your maintaining clear title to the property. If ownership is contested or transferred, the lease becomes void." "What does that mean for the hearing?" Mara asked. "It means you need to win. If a conservator is appointed and decides to void this lease, we're out." Rebecca's expression softened. "But like David said, we have lawyers. If you sign tonight, we have a vested interest in keeping this lease active. We'll intervene on your behalf." Mara looked at Rowan. He nodded. She picked up the pen. Her signature felt heavy. Final. Like she was crossing a line she couldn't uncross. But she wrote her name, Mara Hale, and dated it. Rowan signed as her husband, co-owner of the property. Chen signed for Cascade. It was done. Rebecca pulled out a check, already filled out, $50,000, made out to Mara Hale. "Welcome to the partnership," Chen said, shaking her hand. After they left, Mara and Rowan sat in the silence, the check on the table between them, like something that might disappear if they looked away. "We did it," Mara whispered. "You did it." "We." She looked at him. "This is yours too now." "Mara, I mean it. Half of everything. That's what marriage means, right?" Rowan stared at the check. "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" He met her eyes. "To know this is real, that we're not just playing pretend." The question hung between them. Were they pretending? Mara didn't have an answer, didn't know if she'd ever have an answer. But she knew what she felt when he was near, knew the way her heart settled when he was in the room, knew that somewhere between the storm and this moment, he'd become essential. "It's as real as we make it," she said finally. He nodded slowly. Then let's make it real. Outside, the mountains stood dark against the stars. The county was still out there, still plotting. The hearing was still coming. But tonight, they'd won a battle. And that had to be enough. Mara folded the check carefully and tucked it away. In the morning, she'd deposit it, hire a lawyer, prepare for the fight ahead. But tonight, she let herself rest. Let herself believe they might actually survive this. Rowan built up the fire. Mara made tea. They sat together in the warm cabin, and for the first time in longer than she could remember, the future didn't feel quite so terrifying. 5 days until the hearing, she said. 5 days to get ready. Think it'll be enough? Think it'll be? Has to be. They sat in comfortable silence, listening to the fire pop and settle. Outside, winter pressed against the windows. But inside, they were warm. They were together. And they were done running. The lawyer's office smelled like leather and old books. Mara sat in a chair that probably cost more than her truck, hands folded in her lap, trying not to look as out of place as she felt. Rowan sat beside her, clean-shaven for the first time since she'd met him, wearing a shirt he'd bought at the thrift store in town. They looked like people pretending to be other people. Thomas Garrett stood at the window, backlit by morning sun. Cascade's lawyer, their lawyer now, was younger than Mara expected. Maybe 40, with the kind of confidence that came from winning more than you lost. The county's case is weak, he said without turning around. Hasty marriage, isolation, refusal to cooperate with officials. None of that meets the legal standard for incompetency. Then why are we worried? Rowan asked. Garrett turned. Because Judge Hendricks is presiding, and according to my sources, he plays golf with James Pritchard every Sunday. The law is on your side. Whether the judge will be is another question. Mara's stomach dropped. So we're walking into a rigged game. Not rigged, tilted. Garrett sat on the edge of his desk. But here's what they don't know. Cascade filed an intervention motion this morning. We're claiming interest in the case as lease partners, which means their lawyer has to contend with me, not just you. Will that help? It'll make them nervous, and nervous people make mistakes. He picked up a folder, handed it to Mara. I need you to read this tonight. It's a psychological evaluation from Dr. Sarah Mendez. She's one of the best in the state, and she's agreed to testify on your behalf. I haven't met any Dr. Mendez. You will. Tomorrow, 10 a.m. She'll conduct an assessment. It's standard. Questions about your mental state, your decision-making capacity, your daily functioning. Answer honestly. Don't try to sound perfect. She's looking for competency, not perfection. Mara took the folder with numb fingers. This was really happening. In 4 days, she'd be in a courtroom, fighting to prove she wasn't crazy. What else do we need to do? Rowan asked. Be visible. Be normal. Go to town. Be seen together. Show you're a functional couple. The county's narrative is that Mrs. Hale is isolated and impaired. We need to demonstrate otherwise. I hate this town, Mara said quietly. I know. But we need them to see you're not some recluse losing her mind. We need witnesses who'll say you're competent. After they left, Rowan drove them to the diner. Mara wanted to refuse, wanted to go straight home, but she knew Garrett was right. They needed to be seen. The diner went quiet when they walked in. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every eye turned toward them. Mara forced herself to walk to a booth, to sit down like she belonged there. Rowan slid in across from her, and she could feel the weight of all those stares. The waitress, young girl named Amy, couldn't be more than 19, approached with menus. Her hands shook slightly. Hi, Mrs. Keene. Mrs. Hale, sorry. It's okay, Amy. Coffee? Please, 2. Amy scurried off. Whispers started up around them, barely concealed. This was a mistake, Mara muttered. No, it wasn't. Rowan reached across the table, took her hand. The gesture was deliberate, public. Let them look. Eleanor Price was 3 booths down, watching them like a hawk. When Mara caught her eye, Eleanor smiled that terrible smile. The coffee came. They ordered food they didn't want. Mara forced herself to eat, to act normal, to pretend her world wasn't on the verge of collapse. Ben Hollis walked in halfway through their meal, saw them. His face went hard. He walked over, stopped at their table. Mara, Mr. Hale, Ben, heard you signed a lease. That true? It is. His jaw worked. That was foolish, very foolish. It's my land, my choice. We'll see what the judge says about your choices. He leaned down, voice dropping. You're making this harder than it needs to be. If you'd just been reasonable. Reasonable like letting you steal my land? Rowan's voice was ice cold. Ben straightened. Careful, son. You're new here. You don't understand how things work. I understand theft just fine. That's so. Ben's smile was ugly. Then you'll understand this. I ran a background check on you. Interesting what came up. Or rather, what didn't. It's like you don't exist before 2 years ago. Mara felt Rowan tense beside her. Everyone's got a past, Rowan said. Sure they do, but most people's pasts don't involve sealed juvenile records and a name change. Ben paused. Wonder what the judge will think about that. He walked away, leaving the words hanging like poison. Mara turned to Rowan. Is that true? His face had gone pale. We should go. Rowan, not here. They paid and left. The drive home was silent, tension thick enough to choke on. When they pulled up to the cabin, Rowan got out and started walking toward the woods. Where are you going? Mara called. I need to think. We need to talk. Not now. He disappeared into the trees. Mara stood alone in the yard, anger and fear warring in her chest. What had Ben meant? Sealed records? Name change? Who the hell had she married? She went inside, tried to distract herself with chores, but her mind kept spinning. Rowan had said he was running from bad decisions. But what kind of decisions led to changing your name? An hour passed. Then 2. The sun started its descent, and still no sign of him. Mara was about to go looking when she heard footsteps on the porch. Rowan came in, his expression raw. My name wasn't always Hale, he said without preamble. It was Novak, Rowan Novak. Mara waited. When I was 17, I got involved with some people, bad people. They were running drugs, and I was stupid enough to think it made me important, made me belong somewhere. He sat down heavily. It went wrong. A deal turned into a shootout. 2 people died. I wasn't the shooter, but I was there. I was part of it. Mara's breath caught. They tried me as a juvenile because I was 2 months shy of 18. I testified against the others, took a plea, did 3 years in juvenile detention. His voice was flat, emotionless. When I got out, I changed my name. Started over. Tried to leave all that behind. Did you kill anyone? No, but I helped people who did, and I didn't stop it when I could have. Silence filled the cabin. Mara tried to process it, to reconcile this confession with the man who'd fixed her fences and saved her land. Why didn't you tell me? She asked finally. Because I wanted to be someone different. Wanted to be the person you saw when you looked at me, not the screwed-up kid who made the worst choices possible. He looked at her. I'm sorry. I should have told you before we got married, before any of this, but I was afraid you'd send me away. Would you have blamed me? No. Mara stood, moved to the window. Outside, the mountains were turning purple in the dusk. She'd brought a stranger into her home, married him, trusted him with everything, and now she was finding out he wasn't who she thought he was. But then, who was? Everyone had secrets. Everyone had mistakes that followed them. The county's going to use this against us, she said. I know. They'll say I married a criminal, that it proves I'm not thinking clearly. Probably. She turned to face him. Are you still that person? The one who ran with drug dealers? No. You sure? Yes. No hesitation. I'm not proud of what I did. I'll carry it forever, but I'm not that kid anymore. I haven't been for a long time. Mara studied his face, looking for lies, found only exhaustion and regret. Okay, she said. Rowan blinked. Okay? I believe you, and we deal with this like we deal with everything else, head on. She sat down across from him. Garrett needs to know, tonight, before the county can ambush us with it in court. Mara, if you want to, if this changes things between us, Does it change who you've been since you got here? Does it change that you've stood by me when you could have run? No, but then it doesn't change anything. She reached across the table, took his hand. We all have things we're running from, Rowan. Mine's just grief and loneliness instead of a criminal record. Doesn't make it less real. His fingers tightened around hers. I don't deserve you. Probably not, but you're stuck with me anyway. He almost smiled. Almost. They called Garrett. He listened to Rowan's confession in silence, and when it was done, he swore quietly. This complicates things, he said. Can they use it? Mara asked. They'll try, but the records are sealed, which means they'd need a court order to access them. And since Rowan's not the subject of the competency hearing, the judge has limited grounds to grant that order. Garrett paused. Still, it's ammunition. They'll argue that Mara married a man with a hidden criminal past which shows impaired judgment. So what do? We get ahead of it. Tomorrow we file a disclosure. Put it on record before they can weaponize it. We control the narrative. Rowan made mistakes as a minor, served his time, rehabilitated himself. It actually strengthens our case in some ways. How? Rowan asked. Because it shows Mara did her due diligence. She knew about your past, married you anyway, made an informed adult decision. That's the opposite of incompetency. Except Mara hadn't known, but she understood what Garrett was doing, turning a weakness into strength. Do it, she said. The next morning, Dr. Mendez arrived at the cabin. She was a small woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled into a neat bun. She shook Mara's hand firmly. Mrs. Hale, thank you for seeing me. Did I have a choice? Dr. Mendez smiled. There's always a choice, but I'm glad you made this one. They sat at the kitchen table. Rowan made himself scarce, heading out to work on the barn. Dr. Mendez pulled out a folder and a voice recorder. I'm going to ask you some questions. There are no wrong answers. I'm just trying to get a sense of your mental state, your decision-making capacity. Okay? Okay? The questions started simple. Name, age, date. Could Mara manage her own finances? Yes. Could she care for herself? Yes. Did she understand the consequences of signing a mining lease? Yes. Then they got harder. Tell me about your husband, Dr. Mendez said. What do you want to know? How did you meet? Mara told the story. The storm, the stranger, the choice to help. Dr. Mendez listened without interrupting. And the decision to marry. Walk me through that. We were being threatened. The county wanted my land. Marriage made us harder to separate legally. So it was a strategic decision? Mara hesitated. At first, but it's become more than that. In what way? I trust him. He trusts me. We're partners. Do you love him? The question caught Mara off guard. I don't know. Maybe. It's complicated. Most things worth having are. Dr. Mendez made a note. Tell me about your husband's criminal record. So Garrett had briefed her. Good. He made mistakes when he was young. He served his time. He's a different person now. And you're comfortable with that history? I'm comfortable with who he is now. Some might say marrying a man with a sealed criminal record shows poor judgment. Some people think everything I do shows poor judgment. Mara met the doctor's eyes. I've been judged my whole life for being a woman who doesn't fit their mold, too independent, too stubborn, too unwilling to need a man. And now that I've chosen to partner with one, that's wrong too. So I stopped caring what people think. Dr. Mendez smiled slightly. Good answer. The evaluation lasted 2 hours. By the end, Mara felt wrung out. But Dr. Mendez seemed satisfied. You're going to be fine, she said, packing up. You're articulate, self-aware, and clearly capable of managing your own affairs. I'll submit my report to Mr. Garrett by tomorrow. Will it be enough? In a fair court? Absolutely. In this court? She paused. I hope so. After she left, Rowan came back in. How'd it go? I think okay. Hard to tell. Mara rubbed her face. 3 more days. We'll get through it. You keep saying that. Because I believe it. She wanted to believe it too, but doubt kept creeping in, cold and insidious. That night she couldn't sleep. Lay in bed listening to Rowan move around in the other room, knowing he couldn't sleep either. Finally, she got up and found him sitting by the stove, staring into the flames. "Can't turn your brain off?" she asked. "Something like that." She sat beside him. The cabin was quiet except for the fire's crackle and the wind outside. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Me too." "What if we lose?" "We won't." "But if we do, if they take the land, if they appoint a conservator, then we fight it. We appeal. We don't give up." Mara looked at him, at this man who'd become so essential so fast. "When did you get so stubborn?" "Learned from the best." She leaned against him, and his arm came around her shoulders. It felt natural, right, like they'd been doing this for years instead of weeks. "Rowan? Yeah? Thank you for staying. Thank you for letting me." They sat like that until the fire burned low, and when Mara finally went back to bed, she slept better than she had in days. The weekend passed in a blur of preparation. Garrett came out to the cabin, drilled them on what to expect in court, how to sit, how to speak, what questions they might face. Mara's head spun with instructions. "The county will try to paint you as isolated and unstable," Garrett said. "We counter by showing you're engaged, capable, and making rational decisions. Dr. Mendez's evaluation will help. So will the mining lease. It demonstrates you're managing your assets intelligently." "What about Rowan's record?" Mara asked. "They'll bring it up. We acknowledge it, move on. Don't get defensive. The facts speak for themselves. He was a miner, he's rehabilitated, you made an informed choice. End of story. And if the judge doesn't see it that way?" Garrett's expression went hard. "Then we make it very clear that Cascade Mining has a vested interest in this outcome. A ruling against you affects a multi-million-dollar lease. That brings attention neither the judge nor the county wants." It was a nuclear option, but Mara was glad they had it. Sunday evening, Sarah Price showed up again. This time she looked terrified. "I can't stay long," she said, barely inside the door. "But I had to warn you, my mother, she's been meeting with the county attorney. They're planning something for the hearing, something big." "What kind of something?" Rowan asked. "I don't know exactly, but I heard them talking about witnesses, people who'll testify about your mental state." Sarah looked at Mara. "They're going to say you're paranoid, delusional, that you think people are conspiring against you." "People are conspiring against me. I know, but they're going to make it sound like you're imagining it, like you're seeing threats that aren't there." Mara's blood went cold. It was brilliant in a sick way. Turn her legitimate concerns into symptoms of mental illness. "Who are the witnesses?" Garrett would need to know. "Eleanor, for sure. And I think Dr. Raymond, he's the family doctor who saw you after Thomas died. They'll say you were depressed, unstable, not coping well." Of course, Mara had been a mess after Thomas's death. Anyone would be, but they'd twist grief into incapacity. "Thank you for telling us," Mara said. Sarah nodded and left as quickly as she'd come. Mara stood in the doorway, watching her disappear into the dark. "They're going to use my grief," she said quietly. "Make me look crazy for missing my husband." "We'll counter it," Rowan said. "Garrett will know what to do." But when they called Garrett, even he sounded worried. Grief testimony is tricky. It's sympathetic. People understand losing a spouse. But if they frame it as ongoing, debilitating depression that's affected your judgment for years, it becomes evidence of impairment. He was quiet for a moment. "We need our own witnesses, people who can testify that you're functional, capable, clear-minded. I don't have people. That's the whole problem. There has to be someone. A neighbor, a shopkeeper, anyone who's interacted with you regularly and can vouch for your competency." Mara racked her brain. She'd kept to herself for so long. Avoided town. Avoided people. And now that isolation was being weaponized against her. "What about the folks from Cascade, Beas?" Rowan suggested. "Chen and his team. They negotiated with Mara. They can testify she was sharp, understood the terms, made informed decisions. That could work." Garrett sounded thoughtful. I'll reach out to Chen tonight, see if he's willing. After they hung up, Mara sank into a chair. This is a nightmare. We're still fighting. I'm tired of fighting, Rowan. I'm tired of proving I'm good enough, sane enough, worthy enough. I just want to live my life. He knelt in front of her, took her hands. I know, but we're almost through it. 2 more days. Then we face them down and we win. You can't promise that. Watch me. The certainty in his voice steadied her. Even if it was false certainty, it helped. Monday was a blur of final preparations. Garrett confirmed that David Chen would testify. Dr. Mendez submitted her evaluation. Glowing, according to Garrett. They had their documents, their evidence, their strategy. All they needed now was luck. That night, Mara laid out her good dress, the one she'd worn to Thomas's funeral. It felt wrong, wearing it to this, but it was the only formal thing she owned. Rowan ironed his thrift store shirt. They moved around each other in the small cabin, preparing like soldiers before battle. Whatever happens tomorrow, Mara said, I want you to know I don't regret it. Any of it. Letting you in, marrying you, fighting back. Even if we lose, I don't regret it. Rowan stopped mid-motion, looked at her. We're not losing. But if we do, we're not. He crossed to her, cupped her face in his hands. I don't lose what matters, and you matter, Mara. More than anything has in a long time. He kissed her. Gentle at first, then deeper. Mara's hands found his shoulders, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, the air between them felt charged. That was, Mara started. Real, Rowan finished. That was real. She nodded, couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. They didn't talk about it, just went to their separate beds like always. But Mara touched her fingers to her lips, still feeling the warmth of him, and thought maybe this strange marriage was becoming something neither of them expected. Morning came too fast. Mara dressed carefully, hands shaking. Rowan wore his pressed shirt and the one pair of dress pants he owned. They looked at each other in the weak dawn light. Ready? He asked. No, but let's go anyway. The drive to the courthouse felt endless and too short all at once. Other cars filled the parking lot. The county was making this a spectacle. Mara saw Eleanor Price getting out of her sedan, saw Ben Hollis and James Pritchard conferring near the entrance. Garrett met them at the steps. Chen's here. Dr. Mendez is on standby. We're as ready as we can be. That's not very reassuring, Mara said. It's honest. They walked inside together. The courtroom was smaller than Mara expected, wood-paneled and stuffy. People filled the gallery, townspeople who'd come to watch, reporters from the county paper, faces she recognized and some she didn't, all here to see if Mara Hale was crazy. Judge Hendricks took the bench precisely at 9. He was a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses and a mouth that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. He surveyed the courtroom with obvious distaste. This is a competency hearing regarding Mara Louise Hale, he began. Petitioners allege Mrs. Hale is mentally unfit to manage her own affairs. Mrs. Hale contests this allegation. We'll hear testimony from both sides. Patricia Vance, the county attorney, stood. She was polished, professional, every inch the competent lawyer. Your Honor, the county's position is straightforward. Mrs. Hale has exhibited a pattern of concerning behavior, extreme isolation, paranoid ideation, impulsive decision-making culminating in a hasty marriage to a man with a sealed criminal record. We believe she requires assistance managing her affairs. Garrett rose. Your Honor, Mrs. Hale is a capable, intelligent woman making informed decisions about her own life. The county's real interest here isn't her welfare. It's the valuable mineral deposit on her land. This hearing is a thinly veiled attempt at a land grab. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Garrett, Judge Hendricks said. It's a serious situation, Your Honor. The judge's expression was unreadable. Let's hear the evidence. Ms. Vance, call your first witness. Patricia smiled. The county calls Eleanor Price. Eleanor took the stand, placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth. Mara's stomach churned. Mrs. Price, how long have you known the respondent? Patricia asked. Oh, 15 years or more since she and Thomas moved here. And what was your impression of Mrs. Hale during that time? Well, she was always a bit odd. Standoffish, didn't socialize much. After Thomas died, she got worse. Wouldn't come to town, wouldn't accept help, just holed up on that mountain like she was hiding from the world. In your opinion, was this normal grief? Objection, Garrett said. Mrs. Price isn't qualified to diagnose mental states. Sustained, Patricia adjusted. What did you observe about Mrs. Hale's behavior? She stopped taking care of herself, stopped maintaining her property. And then this winter, she takes in a complete stranger, a vagrant really, and lets him live in her home. Next thing we know, they're married. It was shocking. Not the kind of thing a woman in her right mind would do. Mara's hands clenched in her lap. Rowan's hand found hers under the table, squeezed. The testimony continued. Eleanor painted Mara as unstable, paranoid, making wild accusations about conspiracies. It was masterfully done, just enough truth twisted, just enough to sound damning. When Garrett cross-examined, he was surgical. Mrs. Price, you said Mrs. Hale became isolated after her husband's death. Isn't it true that you and other community members made that isolation worse by gossiping about her? Eleanor's smile tightened. I wouldn't say gossip. What would you call spreading rumors about a widow's mental state? People were concerned. Concerned enough to ostracize her, to make her feel unwelcome in town? I can't control what others do. But you contributed to it. Garrett held up a document. I have statements from 3 individuals who say you described Mrs. Hale as touched in the head and not long for this world. That doesn't sound like concern. That sounds like cruelty. Patricia objected. The judge sustained it, but the point was made. Dr. Raymond was next. He testified about Mara's depression after Thomas's death, the medications he'd prescribed, her refusal to continue treatment. In your medical opinion, was Mrs. Hale suffering from ongoing depression? Patricia asked. I believe so, yes. She showed classic symptoms, withdrawal, loss of interest, difficulty functioning. And in your opinion, could this untreated depression affect her judgment? Potentially, yes. Garrett's cross was brief. Dr. Raymond, when did you last examine Mrs. Hale? It's been 4 years, I believe. 4 years? And you're testifying about her current mental state based on observations from 4 years ago? Depression is often chronic, but you don't actually know if she's currently depressed, do you? You haven't seen her, examined her, or evaluated her current functioning at all. Dr. Raymond shifted uncomfortably. No, but thank you. No further questions. The county called 2 more witnesses, neighbors who'd seen Mara's property fall into disrepair, who'd worried about her living alone. Each one Garrett picked apart, exposing the gaps in their knowledge, the assumptions in their testimony. But Mara could see the judge taking notes, could see him frowning. And she didn't know if Garrett was winning or losing. Finally, Patricia rested. Garrett stood. The defense calls Dr. Sarah Mendez. Dr. Mendez took the stand with calm authority. She outlined her credentials, 20 years as a clinical psychologist specializing in competency evaluations. Dr. Mendez, did you evaluate Mrs. Hale? Garrett asked. I did. Conducted a comprehensive assessment 2 days ago. And what did you find? I found Mrs. Hale to be fully competent. She demonstrated clear thinking, appropriate emotional responses, and excellent decision-making capacity. She's articulate, self-aware, and capable of managing complex situations. What about her marriage? The county suggests it was impulsive. I found it to be strategic and well-considered. Mrs. Hale understood the legal implications, the risks, and the benefits. She made an informed adult choice. And her husband's criminal record? She was aware of it and made a conscious decision that his past didn't define his current character. That's not impulsivity, that's thoughtful evaluation of available information. Patricia's cross-examination was aggressive. She tried to suggest Mara had fooled Dr. Mendez, that one evaluation wasn't enough. But Dr. Mendez held firm. Then Garrett called David Chen. The mining executive testified about the lease negotiations, describing Mara as sharp and detail-oriented. Did you have any concerns about her mental capacity? Garrett asked. None whatsoever. She understood complex contractual language, asked intelligent questions, and negotiated terms favorable to herself. She was one of the most capable clients I've dealt with. The county tried to undermine him, suggested Cascade would say anything to protect their lease, but Chen's testimony was too solid. Finally, Garrett called Mara. Her legs felt weak as she walked to the stand. The courtroom seemed to expand and contract around her. She placed her hand on the Bible, swore to tell the truth, and sat. Garrett's questions were gentle. He walked her through her life, her marriage to Thomas, his death, her years alone, her decision to help Rowan, their marriage, the mining lease. Mrs. Hale, the county suggests you're paranoid, that you believe in conspiracies that don't exist. Is that true? No. The conspiracy is real. They want my land because of the silver deposit. They've admitted as much in private conversations. How do you know about these conversations? A witness told me, someone who overheard them planning. And who is this witness? Mara hesitated. Naming Sarah would destroy the girl's relationship with her mother, but lying would destroy their case. Sarah Price, Eleanor's daughter. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. Eleanor's face went white, then red. Patricia's cross-examination was brutal. She hammered at Mara's isolation, her grief, her convenient marriage. She suggested Mara was imagining threats, seeing enemies where there were none. Isn't it possible, Mrs. Hale, that you're simply a grieving widow who's lost perspective? That these men aren't conspiring against you, they're trying to help? No. You're very certain. I am. Certain enough to marry a stranger, to sign away mineral rights worth millions, to accuse respected community members of corruption? Certain enough to fight for what's mine. Patricia smiled like she'd won something. No further questions. Judge Hendricks called a recess. Mara stumbled out of the courtroom, Rowan and Garrett flanking her. How bad is it? She asked. Hard to say. Garrett looked grim. You did well, but Hendricks is hard to read. They had 30 minutes. Mara spent it in the bathroom, staring at her reflection, trying to breathe. When they reconvened, Judge Hendricks looked tired. I've heard compelling testimony from both sides, he began. This is not an easy decision. Mara's heart hammered. The county has raised legitimate concerns about Mrs. Hale's judgment. Her isolation is documented. Her marriage was unusually sudden, and her accusations against county officials are serious. No. However, the judge paused. The defense has shown clear evidence of competency. Dr. Mendez's evaluation is thorough and professional. The mining lease demonstrates sophisticated decision-making, and I find the county's motives questionable. Hope flickered. Mrs. Hale may make choices others disagree with. She may be stubborn, independent, and unconventional, but none of that constitutes incompetency. He looked at Patricia. The petition is denied. Mrs. Hale retains full control of her affairs. The courtroom erupted. Mara couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only feel Rowan's arm around her as relief crashed through her in waves. They'd won, but the victory tasted wrong in Mara's mouth. She watched Ben Hollis and James Pritchard storm out of the courtroom, faces twisted with rage. Sheriff Carson followed, avoiding eye contact. Eleanor Price sat frozen in her seat, staring at nothing. The gallery emptied slowly. People filed past, some congratulating Mara, others just staring. She couldn't tell which was worse. We should go, Garrett said, before they regroup. Outside, the spring air felt too bright, too normal. Mara stood on the courthouse steps, blinking in the sunlight like she'd just crawled out of a cave. What happens now? Rowan asked Garrett. Now they'll look for another angle. Appeal maybe, though they don't have grounds. More likely they'll try to find violations, environmental permits, zoning issues, anything to slow down the mining operation. Garrett loosened his tie. But legally, you're in the clear. The land is yours. The lease is valid. They lost. Doesn't feel like winning, Mara said. Winning rarely does. Garrett shook her hand, then Rowan's. Call me if they make any more moves. Otherwise, I'll be in touch about the lease details. He left them standing there. Mara felt hollowed out, like someone had scooped out her insides and forgotten to put them back. Let's go home, Rowan said quietly. The drive back was silent. Mara watched the mountains slide past, familiar and strange all at once. She'd fought for this land, bled for it, and now it was truly hers, so why did she feel so empty? When they pulled up to the cabin, everything looked the same. The chickens scratched in their coop. The fence Rowan had fixed stood straight. Smoke curled from the chimney. She must have left the stove going. Home. This was home. Mara got out of the truck and just stood there, unable to move. Mara? Rowan's hand touched her shoulder. You okay? I don't know what I am. He turned her to face him. His eyes searched hers, worried. Talk to me. I spent so long being angry, fighting, and now the fight's over and I don't know what to do with all this. She pressed a hand to her chest. All this rage that has nowhere to go. So let it go. I don't know how. Rowan pulled her against him, and she let herself collapse into his chest, let herself feel the exhaustion, the terror, the fury she'd been holding back for weeks. Her shoulders shook, but no tears came. She was too tired even for that. They stood like that in the yard until the sun started its descent. Then, without speaking, they went inside. Mara made coffee. Rowan built up the fire. They moved around each other in comfortable silence, and slowly, the tightness in Mara's chest began to ease. Sarah's going to catch hell, Rowan said finally, for testifying. I know. Guilt twisted in Mara's gut. I should have found another way. There wasn't another way, and she chose to help. That's on her, not you. Still, Sarah was 19, her whole life ahead of her, and now her mother would probably disown her. I'll make it right, Mara said. Somehow. How? She didn't have an answer, not yet. That night, Mara lay in bed and listened to the cabin settle, listened to Rowan moving around in the other room. He'd been sleeping on the couch for weeks now. It couldn't be comfortable. She got up before she could second-guess herself and opened the bedroom door. Rowan looked up from where he sat by the fire, book in hand. Can't sleep? Come to bed. He went very still. Mara, not like that. I don't want to be alone tonight, and that couch is terrible for your back. He hesitated. Then slowly, he stood and followed her into the bedroom. The bed was small, built for one person, maybe two if they didn't mind being close. Mara climbed in one side and Rowan took the other, keeping a careful distance between them. The mattress dipped under his weight. Mara could feel his warmth, hear his breathing in the dark. This is weird, she said. Little bit. We're married. Sharing a bed shouldn't be weird. We're also basically strangers who got married to avoid a land grab. That makes it pretty weird. Mara almost laughed. Fair point. Silence settled, but it wasn't uncomfortable, just present. Rowan? Yeah? Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done this without you. He shifted and suddenly his hand found hers in the darkness. Their fingers laced together. You could have, he said quietly, but I'm glad you didn't have to. They fell asleep like that, hands clasped, the space between them somehow warmer than the fire. Morning brought trouble with the sunrise. Mara woke to pounding on the door. She jerked upright, heart hammering, and found Rowan already up, pulling on his shirt. Stay here, he said. Like hell. They went to the door together. Through the window, Mara could see Sheriff Carson's truck. But this time, he wasn't alone. 2 state troopers stood behind him. Rowan opened the door. Sheriff? Mr. Hale. Mrs. Hale. Carson looked uncomfortable. I need to come in. Official business. What kind of business? Mara asked. One of the troopers stepped forward. Ma'am, we have a warrant to search the premises. We've received reports of illegal activity on this property. The words didn't make sense. What illegal activity? Mineral extraction without proper permits, environmental violations. We need to verify the mining operation is in compliance with state regulations. Mara's stomach dropped. We haven't started mining yet. The lease was just signed. Nevertheless, we need to conduct the search. They had no choice. Mara and Rowan stood aside while the officers spread through the cabin, through the outbuildings, across the property. They looked through everything, documents, tools, even the chicken coop. It was violation dressed up as law, and there was nothing Mara could do but watch. After 2 hours, they found nothing, because there was nothing to find. The lead trooper looked frustrated. The warrant covers the entire property. We'll need to check the eastern section where the mining survey was conducted. Fine, Mara said through gritted teeth. Check whatever you want. They did. Spent another hour tramping through the woods, checking the survey markers, inspecting the ground, looking for violations that didn't exist. Finally, they left. But the damage was done. The message was clear. Just because they'd lost in court didn't mean they were done fighting. After the trucks disappeared, Mara sank down on the porch steps. Rowan sat beside her. This is how it's going to be, isn't it? She said. They're going to harass us, make our lives miserable, find any excuse to cause problems. Probably. I'm so tired, Rowan. I know. She leaned her head on his shoulder. He didn't pull away. We need to change the game, he said after a while. What do you mean? Right now, we're playing defense, reacting to what they do. We need to go on offense. How? I don't know yet, but there has to be a way to make this stop, to make them back off permanently. Mara thought about it, about Ben and James and the sheriff, about Eleanor and all the others who'd made her life hell. What would make them stop? Exposure, she said slowly. They're doing this because they think they can get away with it, because no one's watching. What if we made people watch? Like how? I don't know. Media? The state attorney general? Someone with power who'd care about county corruption? It was a long shot, but it was something. They called Garrett. He listened to the description of the search, and she could hear him typing. They're fishing, he said, hoping to find something, anything they can use to revoke the mining permits. It's harassment, but technically legal if they have a warrant. So what do we do? Document everything. Every visit, every search, every interaction. Build a case for harassment, and I'll reach out to some contacts at the state level. See if anyone's interested in looking into county-level corruption. Will it work? Maybe. Corruption investigations take time. But if we can get the state involved, it'll make the county think twice about pushing you. After they hung up, Mara felt marginally better. At least they had a plan, even if it was a slow plan. The next few days were quiet. Too quiet. Mara kept expecting another visit, another search, another threat. But nothing came. Instead, something unexpected happened. Sarah Price showed up at the cabin, carrying 2 suitcases and looking terrified. I'm sorry to just appear like this, she said when Mara opened the door, but I didn't know where else to go. My mother kicked me out, said I betrayed her, betrayed the family. She told me not to come back. Mara's heart broke. Sarah, I know I shouldn't ask. I know I've already caused you enough trouble. But I have nowhere to go, no money. And I hoped maybe you'd let me stay, just for a few days, until I can figure something out. Mara looked at this girl who'd risked everything to help her. Looked at Rowan, who nodded. You can stay, Mara said, as long as you need. Sarah's face crumpled with relief. Thank you so much. I'll earn my keep. I can cook, clean, whatever you need. We'll figure it out. Come on, let's get you settled. They gave Sarah the bedroom. Mara moved her things into Rowan's space. Their space now, she supposed. It felt like crossing another threshold. That night, the 3 of them ate dinner together. Sarah talked about her mother, about the fight, about feeling like an outsider in her own home. I always knew she was mean, Sarah said quietly, but I didn't realize how deep it went, how much she enjoyed hurting people. She looked at Mara. I'm sorry. For all the years she made your life miserable. You're not responsible for her actions. Maybe not. But I never stood up to her. I just let it happen. Until now. Now counts for a lot, Rowan said. After Sarah went to bed, Mara and Rowan sat by the fire. The cabin felt different with someone else in it. Fuller. Almost like a real home. We just adopted a 19-year-old, Mara said. Looks like. This is getting complicated. It was already complicated. Rowan looked at her. But complicated isn't always bad. Over the next week, Sarah proved herself useful. She cleaned the cabin top to bottom, organized the storage shed, even helped Mara with the chickens. She was quiet, hardworking, and clearly desperate to earn her place. But more than that, she was company. Someone to talk to during the day while Rowan worked outside, someone who filled the silence. Mara found herself almost happy. It felt strange, dangerous, like something that could be taken away. The mining operation began in earnest 2 weeks later. Cascade brought in equipment, workers, engineers. The eastern section of Mara's property transformed into an active site, drilling, surveying, preparing for extraction. David Chen visited regularly, keeping Mara updated on progress. The deposit was even richer than initial surveys suggested. Conservative estimates now put the total value at $70 million. Mara's 15% royalties would make her wealthy beyond anything she'd imagined. "You'll start seeing payments within 3 months," Chen said, "once we begin actual extraction. Initial estimates are around $40,000 per quarter. That'll increase as production ramps up." $40,000 every 3 months. Mara had lived on less than $10,000 a year for the past 5 years. "What am I supposed to do with all that money?" she asked Rowan that night. "Whatever you want. It's yours." "Ours," she corrected. "We're married, remember?" He looked uncomfortable. "Mara, that money's from your land. I didn't do anything to earn it. You saved my life. You helped me keep the land. That counts." "I'm not taking your money." "Then what are you taking?" The question came out sharper than she intended. "What are we doing here, Rowan? Really? Are we married, or are we just two people playing house while we wait for the other shoe to drop?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know what we are. That's not good enough anymore. I need to know if this is real. If you're staying because you want to, or because you feel obligated." "I'm staying because I—" He stopped, started again. "Because when I think about leaving, I can't breathe. Because this place, this life, you, it's the first thing that's felt right in years. Maybe ever." Mara's heart hammered. "That's not an answer. It's the only one I've got." She wanted to push, wanted to demand clarity, commitment, something solid to hold on to. But looking at his face, she saw her own fear reflected back. They were both terrified, both damaged, both barely holding themselves together. "Okay," she said finally. "We figure it out as we go." "Yeah?" "Yeah." The tension broke. Not resolved, but acknowledged. And for now, that was enough. Spring deepened into early summer. The mining operation hummed along. Sarah enrolled in online courses, talking about maybe becoming a nurse. The cabin rang with conversation, with life, with possibility. And then, 6 weeks after the hearing, everything exploded. The county newspaper ran a story. Front page. Headline screaming, "County officials under investigation for corruption." Mara read it 3 times, unable to believe what she was seeing. The state attorney general had launched an investigation into Ben Hollis, James Pritchard, and Sheriff Carson. Allegations included attempted land fraud, abuse of power, abuse, and conspiracy to deprive a citizen of property rights. Sarah's testimony had been the key. Combined with Garrett's documentation and testimony from David Chen about the attempted interference with the mining lease, the state had enough to move. "They're going down," Sarah said, reading over Mara's shoulder. "They're actually going down." "Don't celebrate yet," Rowan warned. "Investigations take time, and these men have power." But 3 days later, Sheriff Carson resigned. Claimed it was for health reasons. Everyone knew better. A week after that, Ben Hollis was arrested, charged with fraud and embezzlement. Apparently the mining scheme wasn't his first corrupt venture, just the one that finally got caught. James Pritchard held out longer, but a month later, facing overwhelming evidence, he resigned from the county board. The dominoes fell, and Mara watched from her mountain, feeling something like vindication, something like justice. Eleanor Price never faced charges, but her position as social queen of the county evaporated. People started avoiding her, stopped coming to her for gossip. She'd backed the wrong horses, and everyone knew it. "How does it feel?" Sarah asked one evening. "Knowing they lost?" Mara thought about it. "Empty. I wanted them to suffer like they made me suffer, but now that it's happening, I just feel tired. That's because you're a better person than they are. I don't know about that. I think I'm just too exhausted to enjoy revenge. But there was satisfaction in it, in knowing her land was safe, in knowing they couldn't touch her anymore. The first royalty check arrived in July, $42,000. Mara stared at it, unable to process the numbers. "What do you want to do with it?" Rowan asked. She thought about the things she'd gone without. New boots, a working heater for the truck, decent food instead of whatever was cheapest. But that's not what came out of her mouth. "I want to help people," she said. "People like Sarah. People the county's forgotten or decided aren't worth helping." Like a charity? Like a fund for people who need legal help fighting corruption, or housing assistance, or education. The idea took shape as she spoke. "We have more money than we know what to do with. Why not use it for something that matters?" Rowan smiled. "You want to piss them off even more, don't you? Take the money they tried to steal and use it to help the people they've been stepping on. Is that wrong? It's perfect." They started small, funded legal assistance for 2 families fighting eviction, paid off medical debt for an elderly couple the county had been harassing about property taxes, set up a scholarship fund for kids from low-income families. Word spread. People started coming to Mara asking for help. Some she could assist, others she couldn't, but she tried. And slowly her reputation shifted. She wasn't the crazy widow on the mountain anymore. She was Mara Hale, the woman who fought back and won, the woman who used her victory to lift others up. It felt good, felt like purpose. Summer burned into fall. The mining operation produced steadily. The quarterly checks kept coming, each one larger than the last. Mara's accountant, she had an accountant now, which still felt surreal, projected she'd make over $200,000 in the first year alone. She reinvested most of it, bought new equipment for the mine, which increased her royalty percentage, upgraded the cabin, new roof, insulation, a bathroom that didn't leak, hired workers from town, paying them well, creating jobs the county desperately needed. The property transformed. The old homestead became something close to an estate. Not fancy, Mara wouldn't allow that, but solid, secure, built to last. And through it all, Rowan was there, working beside her, helping her navigate business decisions, keeping her grounded when the money and attention threatened to overwhelm her. Their relationship stayed undefined. They shared a bed but rarely talked about what that meant. They worked as partners but avoided words like love. They existed in a comfortable middle ground, neither pushing for more nor settling for less. Until one night in October, when everything shifted. They'd been to town for a meeting with the county board, the new county board, reformers who actually cared about serving constituents. Mara had presented a proposal for a community center, offering to fund half the construction if the county would match it. On the drive home, Rowan was quiet. Mara glanced at him. "What's wrong?" "Nothing." "You're a terrible liar." He sighed. "I've been thinking about us, about what this is." Mara's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "Okay. When we got married, it was strategy, survival. But it's not that anymore. Hasn't been for a long time." He looked at her. "I love you, Mara. I don't know when it happened, exactly. Maybe in the courtroom. Maybe before. But it's real. And I need you to know that." The truck swerved slightly. Mara corrected, pulled over to the side of the road and put it in park. "Say that again," she said. "I love you." "Why?" He almost laughed. "Why? Because you're stubborn and brave and you see people, really see them. Because you fight for what matters. Because you made me believe I could be someone worth being." He reached over, took her hand. "Because when I'm with you, I'm home. For the first time in my life, I'm home." Mara's eyes burned. "I don't know if I can say it back. Not yet. I'm still figuring out what this is." "I know, and that's okay. I'm not asking you to say anything. I just needed you to know the truth." She leaned across the seat and kissed him. Soft at first, then deeper. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against his. "I'm getting there. she whispered. I'm getting there. That's enough. They drove home in silence, but it was the comfortable kind, the kind that felt like understanding. When they reached the cabin, Sarah was waiting on the porch, practically vibrating with excitement. You got another letter, she said, waving an envelope. From the governor's office. Mara took it, confused, opened it carefully. Inside was an invitation. The governor was hosting a summit on rural economic development, and Mara Hale was being honored as a featured speaker, a success story of how private enterprise could transform struggling communities. They want you to speak, Sarah said, in front of the governor, in front of everyone. Mara's first instinct was to refuse. She wasn't a public speaker, wasn't someone who stood in front of crowds, but then she thought about all the people she'd helped, all the people still struggling, all the voices that went unheard. I'll do it, she said. Rowan smiled. Of course you will. The summit was in December. Mara spent weeks preparing, writing, and rewriting her speech. She talked about corruption, about survival, about the importance of standing up even when the odds seemed impossible. The night before the event, she barely slept. Rowan held her, whispering reassurance. You faced down worse than a crowd, he said. You've got this. The summit hall was massive. Hundreds of people filled the seats. Mara stood backstage, stomach churning, while the governor introduced her. Then she walked out into the lights. The first few seconds were terrible. Her mouth went dry. Her mind blanked. She looked at all those faces and forgot every word she'd planned. But then she saw Rowan in the front row, Sarah beside him, both of them looking at her like she was someone worth believing in. And she started talking. She told her story. Not the sanitized version, the real one. About grief and isolation, about desperation and the choice to help a stranger, about corruption and fighting back, about winning against impossible odds. Her voice shook at first, then steadied. By the end, she was speaking with the same fierce determination that had carried her through the hearing, through the investigation, through everything. When she finished, the room erupted in applause. People stood. The governor shook her hand, said something about inspiration and courage. But Mara barely heard it. She was looking at Rowan, who was beaming like she'd just conquered the world. Maybe she had, in her own small way. Afterward, people swarmed her, reporters asking questions, officials offering partnerships, fellow landowners wanting advice. It was overwhelming and exhilarating and exhausting all at once. By the time they escaped to the hotel, Mara felt wrung out. You were incredible, Sarah said. I was terrified. Didn't show. Rowan pulled Mara aside. I'm proud of you. You know that? I couldn't have done any of this without you. Yeah, you could have. But I'm glad you didn't have to. He kissed her forehead. Come on, let's go home. Home. The word settled warm in Mara's chest. Because that's what it was now. Not just a cabin on a mountain, but a place filled with people who mattered, people who'd chosen each other against all odds. They drove back through the winter dark, and Mara thought about how far she'd come. From a widow barely surviving to someone with purpose, with resources, with power to change things. It wasn't the ending she'd imagined, but it was better, messier, more real. And as the mountains rose dark against the stars, Mara knew one thing for certain. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The knock in the storm had changed everything, and she'd never been more grateful for the choice to open the door. Winter settled over the mountains like an old friend this time. Not the enemy it had been 2 years ago when Rowan collapsed at Mara's door, but something softer, anticipated. The first snow came in early November, and Mara stood on the porch watching it fall, feeling the weight of how much had changed. The mining operation had slowed for the season, but the money kept coming. The community center was half built in town, funded by Mara's foundation and county matching funds. 3 families had new homes, 12 kids had college scholarships, and Eleanor Price had moved to her sister's place 2 counties over, unable to face the town that had turned its back on her. Mara should have felt triumphant, should have felt vindicated. Instead, she just felt tired. You're thinking too hard again, Rowan said from the doorway. She didn't turn around. Someone has to. That someone doesn't always have to be you. He moved beside her, handed her a mug of coffee. Sarah wants to know if we're doing Thanksgiving here or if she should make other plans. Other plans? Where would she go? Exactly what I said, but she's being careful. Doesn't want to assume. Mara sipped the coffee. It was good. Rowan had learned how she liked it. Strong, a little sugar, no cream, chum. The small intimacies of shared life. Tell her we're doing it here. Obviously. Obviously, he echoed, smiling. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the snow accumulate on the fence posts, on the roof of the barn, on the mountains beyond. The land looked peaceful, looked like it belonged to them, and they belonged to it. I've been thinking, Mara said. Dangerous. I'm serious. I've been thinking about what we're doing. The foundation. Helping people. It's good work, but it's reactive. We wait for people to come to us with problems. And I want to do more. I want to build something that lasts. Not just money thrown at problems, but real infrastructure. A legal clinic, a job training center, something that changes the system, not just patches it. Rowan was quiet for a moment. That's a big undertaking. I know. It'll cost a fortune. We have a fortune. It'll take years. We have years. She looked at him. Don't we? The question hung between them. They'd avoided talking about the future in concrete terms. Lived in a perpetual present where tomorrow was always uncertain. Yeah, Rowan said finally. We have years. Something in Mara's chest loosened. Not quite relief, not quite happiness. Something in between. Then let's use them. Thanksgiving came cold and clear. Sarah cooked a turkey that was slightly dry, but nobody complained. Mara made pies that were slightly burned but tasted fine. Rowan handled everything else, moving around the kitchen like he'd been doing this his whole life. They sat at the table, the same table where they'd signed the mining lease, where they'd planned their defense, where they'd built this strange family. And Mara looked at the two people across from her, Sarah, 20 now, taking online nursing courses and talking about maybe going to a real university next year. Building a life from nothing with the same determination Mara recognized in herself. And Rowan, 30 years old last month, though they'd barely celebrated. Still carrying ghosts but not letting them drive anymore. Still stubborn and loyal and maddeningly careful with his words. I want to say something, Mara said. They both looked at her. I'm grateful for both of you, for everything that's happened, even the hard parts. Especially the hard parts, maybe. Because they brought us here. She raised her glass of cheap wine. To family, however we find it. To family, Sarah echoed, eyes bright. Rowan just nodded, but his hand found Mara's under the table and squeezed. They ate too much and talked too long, and when Sarah finally went to bed, Mara and Rowan cleaned up in silence. That was nice, he said, drying the last plate. It was. Think we'll do it again next year? I think we'll do it for a lot of years. He set down the towel, turned to face her. Mara, I need to ask you something. Her stomach tightened. Okay. This marriage, this life we're building, is it enough for you? Or are you just settling because it's easier than being alone? The question hit harder than she expected. Was she settling? She'd asked herself that 100 times. I don't know if it's enough, she said honestly. I don't know if anything's ever enough. I spent 5 years alone thinking that was what I deserved, that I'd had my chance at love and lost it. And then you showed up and everything got complicated. That's not an answer. It's the only one I have right now. I'm still figuring out what I feel, what I want, what I'm capable of wanting. She moved closer to him. But I know this. I don't want you to leave. I know when you're not here, something feels wrong. I know I trust you more than I've trusted anyone except Thomas. And I know that scares me more than anything the county ever did. Why does it scare you? Because I can survive losing land, losing money, losing a fight, but losing you? Her voice cracked. I don't know if I can survive that. Rowan cupped her face in his hands, rough and gentle, all at once. You're not going to lose me. I'm not going anywhere. You can't promise that. Watch me. He kissed her, and it was different this time. Not strategic, not comforting, just honest. Just two people who'd found each other in the wreckage and decided to build something new. When they pulled apart, Mara was shaking. "I love you," she said. The words felt strange in her mouth, foreign. "I don't know when it happened, but it did, and I'm terrified." "Me too." He pressed his forehead to hers. "But I'd rather be terrified with you than safe without you." They stood there in the kitchen, holding each other, while outside the snow kept falling and the world kept turning and everything felt impossibly fragile and impossibly right, all at once. The new year brought changes. Mara hired architects for the legal clinic, bought a building in town that had been sitting empty for years, started recruiting lawyers willing to work for people who couldn't afford representation. The pushback was immediate. Some townspeople thought she was overstepping. Who was she to decide what the community needed? Who was this widow-turned-wealthy woman trying to reshape their lives? But more people supported her. People who'd been helped by the foundation. People who'd watched the corruption investigation unfold. People who were tired of being stepped on. The clinic opened in March. Mara cut the ribbon with shaking hands while reporters took pictures and the new mayor gave a speech about community and justice. That night, alone with Rowan, she admitted the truth. "I'm in over my head, over my skin." Probably. "I don't know how to run a legal clinic. I barely finished high school. I'm just making this up as I go." "That's what everyone does. They just pretend they're not." She laughed, but it came out exhausted. "What if I fail? What if I waste all this money on something that doesn't work?" "Then you fail, and you try something else." He pulled her close. "You're allowed to be human, Mara. You're allowed to make mistakes. I've made enough mistakes for a lifetime, and you're still here, still fighting, still trying to make things better." He kissed the top of her head. "That's not failure. That's stubborn hope. And it's the best thing about you." The clinic stumbled at first, hiring the wrong people, taking on cases they couldn't win, learning hard lessons about the difference between wanting to help and knowing how to help. But slowly, they found their rhythm. Helped a single mother keep custody of her kids, stopped an illegal eviction, took on the county when they tried to raise property taxes on the poorest residents while giving breaks to wealthy developers, won some, lost some, kept fighting. By summer, the clinic was handling 30 cases. By fall, 60. The waiting list grew faster than they could hire staff. "We need more space," the clinic director said. A sharp woman named Maria who'd worked for legal aid in 3 states and knew how to fight. "And more funding. How much?" Mara asked. Maria named a figure that made Mara's head spin. But the mining royalties kept coming, the money kept growing, and what good was it sitting in a bank account? "Do it," Mara said. The expansion happened fast. They bought the building next door, hired 4 more lawyers, set up satellite offices in 2 neighboring counties. The Hale Foundation, named not after Mara but after the idea that everyone deserved help climbing back up when the world knocked them down, became known across the region. And with recognition came scrutiny. A state senator showed up at the clinic one day, unannounced. Mara met him in the cramped office that served as her workspace when she was in town. "Mrs. Hale." Senator Morrison was mid-50s, silver-haired, with the kind of smile that never quite reached his eyes. "I've been hearing a lot about your work. Good things, I hope." "Interesting things. You've made quite an impact in a short time." "We're trying." "Some people think you're trying too hard, making enemies, disrupting the natural order of things." Mara's jaw tightened. The natural order needed disrupting. Perhaps. But there are ways to create change without declaring war. He leaned back in his chair. "I'm here to offer you an opportunity. A seat on the State Economic Development Board. Help shape policy from the inside instead of fighting it from the outside." "Why would you offer me that?" "Because you're effective, because you have resources, and because it's better to have you working with us than against us." There it was, the real reason. They couldn't shut her down, so they wanted to co-opt her, make her part of the system she was fighting. "I appreciate the offer," Mara said carefully, "but I'm not interested in being neutralized." Morrison's smile thinned. "That's not what this is, isn't it? You want me on a board where I'll be one voice among many. where I'll have to compromise and play politics and water down everything I'm trying to do. She stood. I'm more effective out here, causing trouble, being a pain in the neck for people who think power means they can do whatever they want. You're making a mistake. Probably. But it's my mistake to make. He left, and Mara knew she'd just made another enemy, but she was tired of playing nice with people who saw justice as negotiable. When she told Rowan about it that night, he just shook his head. You really can't help yourself, can you? Help what? Picking fights with powerful people. They picked the fight first. I'm just not backing down. He smiled. I know, it's terrifying and amazing in equal measure. Which one wins? Amazing, always amazing. 2 years after the hearing, after the victory, after everything changed, Mara stood in front of the completed community center. It was bigger than she'd imagined. Better. A real space for real people to gather, learn, grow. The dedication ceremony drew hundreds. The governor came. So did state legislators, county officials, reporters. Everyone who wanted to be seen supporting this success story. But Mara's eyes kept going to the back row, where Rowan sat next to Sarah. Where the people who actually mattered watched her with pride and something like love. She gave a short speech, talked about community, about the responsibility that came with resources, about the importance of lifting others up instead of stepping on them to climb higher. Afterward, people swarmed her again, wanting pictures, wanting quotes, wanting her attention. She endured it because it came with the territory. But as soon as she could, she slipped away, found Rowan waiting by the truck. Ready to go home? He asked. More than ready. They drove in comfortable silence, the kind they'd perfected over 2 years of marriage. Real marriage now, not just strategic partnership. They'd never had a ceremony, never renewed vows, never made it official beyond the paperwork. But somewhere along the way, it had become real anyway. I've been thinking about something, Bud, Rowan said as they pulled up to the cabin. Should I be worried? Maybe. He killed the engine but didn't get out. I want to make this official, the marriage. Not the legal part. That's already done. But the real part. The part where we stand in front of people and say, this is what we choose. This is who we choose. Mara's throat went tight. Like a wedding? Like a wedding, nothing fancy. Just us and Sarah and whoever else matters. But I want to say the words when they mean something. When we're not doing it to survive, but because we want to. I already married you once. I know, but I want to marry you again, for real this time. He took her hand. What do you say? Mara looked at this man who'd stumbled into her life half frozen and desperate. Who'd become her partner, her friend, her home. Who'd stood beside her through everything and never once asked for more than she could give. Okay, she said, let's get married. Again. For real. They planned it for spring. Nothing elaborate. Just a simple ceremony on their land with the mountains as witnesses and the people they loved in attendance. Sarah cried when they told her. I get to be your witness? Who else would it be? Mara said. They invited the clinic staff, David Chen from Cascade, Maria and her family, a few people from town who'd stood by them when it mattered. Not a big group, but the right group. The morning of the ceremony, Mara woke with butterflies. Ridiculous at her age. Ridiculous after everything. But there they were, fluttering in her chest like she was 20 instead of 55. Sarah helped her dress. A simple blue dress. Nothing fancy. Mara's hair was more gray now than brown, and she'd stopped trying to hide it. Let herself look her age. Let herself look like exactly who she was. You look beautiful, Sarah said. I look old. You look happy. That's better. Rowan waited for her at the edge of the property, where the land sloped down toward the valley. He wore a suit that actually fit, and his hair was cut shorter than usual, and he looked so nervous Mara almost laughed. The officiant, a judge they'd worked with through the clinic, kept it short, talked about partnership and choice, and the courage it took to build a life with someone. Then it was their turn. Mara, Rowan said, voice rough. When I knocked on your door 2 years ago, I was running from everything. From my past, from my mistakes, from myself. You could have let me freeze, should have probably, but you didn't. You let me in, and you kept letting me in, even when you saw all the broken parts, even when I gave you every reason to send me away. He took her hands. You saved my life. But more than that, you gave me a reason to live it, to be better, to build something that matters. I love you. I'll love you until the mountains wear down to nothing, and I choose you every day, for all the days we have left. Mara's eyes burned. She took a shaky breath. Rowan, I spent 5 years convinced I'd used up my chance at happiness, that I was supposed to just survive until survival wasn't worth it anymore. And then you showed up and made me remember what it felt like to want something, to fight for something, to believe in something. Her voice cracked. You're stubborn and infuriating, and you never let me wallow in my own misery. You push me to be braver than I think I am, and I love you for it. I love you for staying, for choosing me when you could have chosen easy. I choose you too, today and all the days after. The judge pronounced them married, again, and Rowan kissed her like it was the first time, like they hadn't done this already, like it was new and terrifying and perfect. People clapped, Sarah sobbed, and Mara felt something settle in her chest, something that felt like peace. They had a party after, nothing fancy, just food and music and people who mattered. As the sun set and the mountains turned gold, Mara stood with Rowan and Sarah and looked at the life they'd built. This is good, she said quietly. It is, Rowan agreed. I still can't believe it's real sometimes. It's real. We made it real. Sarah raised her glass. To making impossible things real. They drank to that. And as the stars came out and the night deepened, Mara thought about all the things that had to go wrong for everything to go right. The storm, the desperation, the county's greed, the fight. All of it necessary. All of it leading here. 5 years later, Mara stood in the same spot and marveled at how different everything looked. The mining operation had expanded, carefully, with environmental protections Cascade took seriously. The royalties had grown to the point where Mara barely thought about money anymore. The foundation had expanded too. Legal clinics in 6 counties, a job training center that had placed 200 people in good-paying work, affordable housing projects, scholarship programs, a network of support that kept growing. Sarah had finished nursing school and was working at the county hospital, talking about medical school, maybe, still living on the property in a small house Rowan had built for her, still part of the family in ways that mattered. And Rowan, still beside her, still her partner in everything. They'd weathered arguments and setbacks and the 1,000 small frustrations of building a life together, but they'd weathered them together. And that made all the difference. Mara was 60 now. Rowan was 35. The age gap that people used to whisper about didn't matter anymore. They'd outlasted the gossip, outlasted the doubters, just kept building and fighting and choosing each other. You thinking about the past again? Rowan asked, coming up beside her. How'd you know? You get this look, like you're seeing ghosts. Not ghosts, just memories. Good ones? Mostly. Even the hard parts feel good now, like they were worth it. He put his arm around her shoulders. They were worth it. They stood there watching the sun set over the mountains, the same mountains that had witnessed their struggle, their victory, their life together. The land was theirs, truly theirs, in a way that had nothing to do with deeds or leases. They'd earned it with blood and tears and stubborn refusal to give up. You ever regret it? Mara asked. Knocking on that door? Never. You? Never. Not even when I'm being impossible? Especially not then. He kissed her temple. What do you want to do next? That was the question, wasn't it? They'd accomplished so much, built so much, changed so much. What came after changing the world? I want to live, Mara said. Just live, without fighting, without proving anything. I want to wake up in the morning and tend my chickens and sit on the porch with you and not have to save anyone. That simple? That simple. We can do that. And they did. Not right away. There were projects to finish, people to help, commitments to honor. But gradually, Mara stepped back. Let other people run the foundation. Let the clinic operate without her constant oversight. Let herself just be. It was harder than she expected. She'd defined herself by the fight for so long that peace felt uncomfortable, like clothes that didn't quite fit. But Rowan was patient. He'd pull her away from emails, from phone calls, from the constant pull of other people's problems. Remind her that she'd done enough, that it was okay to rest. "You saved yourself," he said one evening. "You saved me. You saved dozens of other people. You don't have to save everyone." "But what if I can help?" "Then someone else can help. The world doesn't rest on your shoulders alone." It took time, but slowly Mara learned to let go, to trust that the systems she'd built would keep running, to believe that other people could carry the fight forward. And in the letting go, she found something unexpected: joy. Simple, uncomplicated joy in the small things. A good cup of coffee, a sunset, Rowan's hand in hers, Sarah's visits with stories from the hospital, the chickens pecking in the yard. Life. Just life. Not survival. Not fighting. Just the quiet pleasure of existing. On a fall evening, 7 years after that knock in the storm, Mara sat on the porch with Rowan and Sarah. The leaves were turning, painting the mountains in shades of amber and rust. The air smelled like wood smoke and coming winter. "Tell me the story again," Sarah said, "about how you two met." Mara laughed. "You've heard it 100 times." "I know, but I like it." So Mara told it again, about the storm, about the choice to open the door, about everything that came after. "And you really thought he might kill you?" Sarah asked, though she knew the answer. "I thought a lot of things. None of them turned out to be true." "Best mistake you ever made," Rowan said. "It wasn't a mistake, it was a choice, the first brave choice I'd made in years." Mara looked at him. "And it led to all the other choices, the good ones and the hard ones and the ones that changed everything." "Do you think you'd do it again?" Sarah asked. "If you could go back, knowing everything that was going to happen, would you still open that door?" Mara didn't hesitate. Yes, every single time. Because that was the truth of it. The storm had brought Rowan to her door, but she'd chosen to let him in, chosen to help, chosen to fight, chosen to love again when it seemed impossible. And all those choices, strung together like beads on a thread, had created this life. This strange, beautiful, impossible life. The mountains stood dark against the stars now, eternal and unmoved by human struggle. But Mara knew better. The mountains had changed too. They'd witnessed transformation, had been part of it. The silver torn from their depths had funded justice. The land that men had tried to steal had become a foundation for something better. Nothing was wasted, not the grief, not the loneliness, not the fear. It had all fed into this moment, sitting on a porch with people she loved, watching the world turn. "I'm grateful," Mara said quietly, "for all of it, even the hard parts, maybe especially the hard parts." "Why especially those?" Sarah asked. "Because easy things don't teach you anything, don't change you. It's the hard things that show you what you're made of, that force you to become who you're supposed to be." Rowan squeezed her hand. "And who are you supposed to be?" Mara thought about it, about the frightened widow she'd been, about the fighter she'd become, about the person she was now, somewhere in between. "Someone who opens the door," she said finally. "When someone's knocking in the storm, someone who chooses compassion over fear, someone who fights for what matters and lets go of what doesn't." She looked at her husband, her found daughter, her hard-won peace. Someone who knows that strength isn't about never breaking. It's about breaking and choosing to heal anyway. The night deepened around them. Inside, the cabin glowed with warm light. Their home. Their sanctuary. Built from nothing, defended against everything, transformed into something that mattered. And Mara Hale, 60 years old and still learning, still growing, still choosing bravery over safety, knew one thing for certain: she would open that door again, would make that same choice, would weather that same storm. Because the storm had brought her everything that mattered, had taught her that sometimes the most dangerous thing isn't letting a stranger in. It's staying locked inside yourself, protecting nothing, becoming nothing. The knock in the storm had changed her life, but the choice to answer it, that had saved it. "Come on," Rowan said, standing. It's getting cold. Let's go inside. Mara took his hand and let him pull her up. Let him lead her home. Let herself be loved and loved back and believe that all of it, every impossible piece, was real. They walked inside together, the three of them, leaving the dark and the cold behind. And in the morning, when the sun rose over the mountains, they'd wake up and do it again. Choose each other, choose bravery, choose life. Not because it was easy, but because some things were worth fighting for. And they'd learned, in the hardest way possible, that love was one of them.